Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Please subscribe and keep watching more details. The Curse of Oak Island, historic First Nation artifact find leads to team ceasing work. This week on The Curse of Oak Island, the team found themselves in a state of despair after they were ordered to cease operations in a hugely important area of the island. The guys spent a lot of this week working on the southeastern corner of the swamp, where they found a couple of very significant artifacts. Unfortunately, one of these artifacts would prove to be so significant that it caused the guys to cease working. Firstly, Rick Lagina appeared to stumble upon a brand new stone feature, which seemed to be an arrangement of human-placed cobblestones. This led the guys to wonder if it was another section of the cobblestone roadway that they spent last year uncovering. Rick enlisted the help of surveyor Steve Guptill to work out if the feature was part of the stone roadway and where it was going. Guptill later concluded that it was part of the roadway and that it was leading directly to the C1 borehole cluster, where they recently found gold, in the Money Pit area. Rick called this another aha moment and later stated that this find could be hugely significant for their work. Oak Island team discovered ancient First Nation pottery. However, archaeologists Laird Niven and Liz Michaels also came across an intriguing find, a very old and very delicate piece of pottery. Laird almost instantly identified it as belonging to the Mi'kmaq people, First Nation Native Americans who traditionally inhabited Nova Scotia. This meant the pottery could be between 500 and 2,500 years old. Laird followed the rules as laid out by Nova Scotia's Department of Communities, Culture and Heritage, CTH, and informed that organization and the Acadia First Nation Council of the find. He also warned the Lagina brothers that the CTH might ask them to stop working in that area. And sure enough, that's precisely what the CTH did. The Acadia First Nation Council and the CTH requested all the data and maps that the guys had of the area and asked the fellowship to cease and desist immediately until they could get their own people to review the data and visit the island. The CTH provided our guys with a map of the island where they shaded various parts in red. Red meant off limits. The fellowship were now excluded from 4 acres of the island, including the area with the stone roadway. Oak Island team reacted with anger to cease and desist order. Marty Lagina's anger and frustration boiled over. He pointed out that the team wanted to cooperate with the authorities, but felt they were now being hampered on their own island. It seems the more they uncover, the more of their island is taken away from them. Marty spoke of throwing in the towel and just concentrating their efforts solely in the Money Pit area, the one part of the island where the guys still have free rein. At this point, the war room took on the atmosphere of a funeral. There were depressed, sullen faces all around the table. Laird sat with his head in his hands. Praise be to Rick Lagina and Gary Drayton. These guys managed to drag the others out of the fug. Rick calmly said, "There's a way to move forward, and I think we should." He raised morale by pointing out that the drilling program in the Money Pit shows real hope and promise. Gary said, "This roadblock has been thrown in front of us. We're going to go somewhere else and find something spectacular." Smiles began breaking out around the table, and Rick added, "We'll find a way through this. Let's just keep moving forward." The morning mist hung low over Oak Island, its tendrils creeping through the trees and clinging to the weathered stones like an ancient shroud. For centuries, the island had been a place of mystery, an enigmatic fortress of buried secrets and tantalizing legends. The Lagina brothers, Rick and Marty, had spent years meticulously probing its depths, chasing the elusive treasure that had lured treasure hunters for over 200 years. Yet, no matter how many traps they encountered, how many tunnels they unearthed, the island seemed to guard its secrets with an unyielding resolve. But today, something felt different. The metal detector beeped faintly in the distance, a noise that usually spurred excitement among the crew. This time, however, there was something solemn in the air. As the team gathered around, their faces illuminated by the pale morning light, a sense of anticipation gripped them all. Jack Begley was the first to kneel down in the soft earth, his gloved hands carefully brushing away the dirt. There, beneath the soil, something gleamed, a small, intricate artifact, weathered yet unmistakably significant. As he held it up to the light, the team's collective breath caught in their throats. It was unlike anything they had found before. It's First Nation, whispered Laird Niven, the archaeologist, his voice barely audible but laced with awe. The artifact was a small, delicately carved pendant made of bone, adorned with symbols that even at first glance spoke of a deep cultural significance. It was clear this was not just another curious relic of the island's storied past. This was a sacred object, a piece of history that belonged to the indigenous people who had lived in the region long before the first European explorers had ever set foot on Nova Scotia's shores. The team stood in silence, the weight of the discovery sinking in. Over the years they had found numerous artifacts, coins, old tools, fragments of the past, but this was different. This was a direct link to the First Nations, a tangible connection to the Mi'kmaq people, whose history and culture had been intertwined with the island for millennia. Laird's face was a mask of contemplation, and he stood up slowly, dusting off his hands. "We need to be careful," he said, looking at Rick, his eyes filled with the gravity of the situation. "This isn't just another artifact. This belongs to a people whose land we are on, whose history we are disturbing. We have to respect that." Rick Lagina, normally a man of few words but with a deep reverence for history, nodded. The enthusiasm that had always driven him, that relentless passion for solving the island's mysteries, flickered momentarily, giving way to something else. Respect, responsibility. The crew gathered around the artifact, studying it in quiet reverence. Marty, ever the pragmatic engineer, was the first to speak up. "We need to bring in the right people. Experts in First Nation history, cultural leaders from the Mi'kmaq community. We can't just continue digging like this never happened." Rick, his face serious, glanced at the horizon. "Agreed. This changes everything." Within hours, the team ceased all excavation work on the island. The usual sounds of drills and heavy machinery were replaced by an eerie silence. The discovery of the First Nation artifact had cast a new light on their mission. This was no longer just a treasure hunt. It had become something larger, something more profound. Meetings were called. Representatives from the Mi'kmaq Nation were invited to the island, and cultural experts arrived to assess the find. The mood was cautious, filled with a mixture of excitement for the historical significance of the find and a deep respect for the cultural sensitivities involved. The island, long believed to be the resting place of treasures from pirates or Templar knights, now revealed another layer of its mystery, one tied to the people who had lived on and around it long before the notion of hidden wealth had ever entered anyone's mind. Chief Harold Augustine of the Mi'kmaq Nation arrived days later, greeted by the Lagines and the rest of the team. There was no grand fanfare, no television cameras rolling as he walked the sacred ground his ancestors had walked. It was a quiet, private moment, filled with an unspoken understanding. Chief Augustine examined the pendant, his weathered hands gently holding the artifact that had lain buried for centuries. "This is our history," he said quietly, his voice rich with emotion. "Our ancestors lived here, fished these waters, and respected this land. This discovery is not just about what you're searching for, it's about what has always been here." His words settled over the team like a blanket of truth. Oak Island was no longer just a riddle to be solved. It was a piece of living history, one that transcended the search for gold or riches. For the Lagines, it was a humbling moment, a realization that they had been touching the edges of something far more significant than they had ever imagined. The work stopped completely that day. The team agreed to pause their search, not out of defeat but out of respect. The discovery had brought them face to face with the reality that Oak Island was more than just a playground for treasure hunters. It was a sacred land, rich in history and meaning, belonging to a people whose connection to the island was deeper than any hidden vault or chest of gold. As the sun set over Oak Island, casting a golden hue across the water, Rick and Marty stood by the shoreline, reflecting on the events of the day. There was no regret in their hearts, only a profound sense of responsibility. "The island has its own way of revealing what it wants us to find," Rick mused quietly, watching as the waves lapped gently against the shore. "Maybe this is what we were meant to discover all along." Marty nodded, his practical mind now tempered with a deeper understanding. "Maybe the real treasure isn't what we've been looking for. Maybe it's something else entirely." And as the last rays of sunlight disappeared, the island remained silent, its secrets still hidden beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to be revealed.